Today's horror story is written by Saturdead. I lost my job at the start of the COVID pandemic, and I started spending a lot of time online. I got stuck in a lot of online rabbit holes. At one point, I spent an entire weekend looking at flat earth videos. I've looked at pretty much every online conspiracy board, and I'm pretty sure I'm on a watch list somewhere. Once I got a new job, I left that life behind me, except for a few friends I made along the way. Most were just curious people, not the kind of crazy radicals one might imagine. A surprising amount of them were ordinary people with a skeptical mind. They weren't the kind of people who got stuck on crazy ideas just for the hell of it. They were the type of people that liked to see how the sausage was made, so to speak. As I cleaned up the remnants of my crazy, unemployed lifestyle, I noticed most of my friends and acquaintances were already off chasing a new random trend. Static chasing. I didn't pay it any attention. Over the months that passed, I zoned out a lot of what they were doing. I disappeared off all mailing lists, all subreddits, the Facebook groups, the Discord chats, all of it. I started getting back a semblance of ordinary life. Looking back at it was a bit embarrassing. When you've got nothing but hours of anxiety on your hands, you get desperate to fill it with something. But as things returned to normal, I tried putting all that time behind me and moved on. I got the occasional message, still. A few people were genuinely worried about me, or curious. But eventually, those all stopped too. That wasn't until last October. Mags was one of the most grounded, well-researched people I knew from that time. She was a moderator on various boards. She was the kind of person who just loved to ask questions and spark a conversation, even if it pissed people off. She could toss a question into a group of people like a hand grenade and just watch as the sparks flew. She was mean, but never too mean, and it was always done with a sparkle in her eye. So when she messaged me 4 months after we stopped talking, I knew something was up. Her message didn't help either. "Help me," it said. A text message to my private phone. I didn't even know she had my number. At first it didn't bother me. I felt a bit bad, but I tried putting it behind me. Mags was one of the few people I genuinely liked from those days. And we'd spent more than one night online just talking about everything and nothing. To her, every rabbit hole was just a new way to look at old questions. And that was all she was looking for. New paths for her mind to wander. Still, I try not to think about her. I was moving on. Then there was that time where a friend of mine canceled on our plans. I'd set aside my entire night to see a movie, but suddenly I was wide open. Pissed, I got back online and looked for something to watch. Some YouTube videos, anything. Mag's last message came creeping back into my mind, and I found myself opening a few tabs. I knew for a fact that the last thing she'd been into was static chasing. But what was static chasing? Who were static chasers? What did it all mean? If you don't know, you're in for a ride. Jesus Christ, these people are something else. When there's no broadcast, or when there's a loss of signal, an older TV defaults to showing a static murmur of black and white dots. Background radiation. A lot of modern TVs instead default to a black or blue screen, but some still show it. Today, kids are growing up without ever having to see it. I never really thought about static going away. Back in the days before digital, TV static was just a part of watching TV. My brothers and I called it the War of Ants, where we tried seeing whether black or white dots were the most numerous. But nowadays, static is different. It isn't shown as much, so there are these people called static chasers who pride themselves in finding traces of static in pretty much anything analog. They post pictures of their finds, they share fun anecdotes, and they seem to genuinely enjoy the sound. There's something about the burst of static that just can't be explained to someone who's never heard it. Try and remember, when did you hear it last? So I found a few sites dedicated to static chasing. Back down the rabbit hole, Facebook groups, YouTubers, sketchy Patreon unlocks, the whole shebang. It was like a phantom limb growing back into my brain. I knew these roads. I'd traveled them before. It wasn't until I found the Static Chaser subreddit that I started getting worried. Not because of the amount posted or what they posted. No, the opposite. It was basically abandoned. 56,000 members, 2 people browsing the subreddit. All mods were removed, no stickies, locked posts. The place was abandoned. Still, the last post was a couple of weeks old. And before that, there were dozens of posts and even more comments every single day. Something had happened here. I tried looking for Mags' username, but I couldn't find it. She had dozens of backups, but there was nothing. I just started browsing a few topics leading up to the abandonment of the community, and it was just spooky. I tried staying in front of it, like you said, one commenter had posted. It really does change, but you gotta be there for hours. Is this safe? That was their final post. No responses. Other posts hinted that there was a new trend among the static chasers. They were tuning their old TVs to frequencies with heavy static and just sitting in front of them. Some people posted Instagram pics of having a coffee and biscuits in front of a static screen. Others posted their cats sleeping on top of their thick screens. This was a community with thousands of people who all just shared an interest. Some did it for fun, but others seemed to have a genuine interest. But going back just a little, I noticed a small trend. People posting their blots. Blots are what happens when the static lines up into a big black spot in the middle of the screen. This is extremely rare. This was a subgroup within the static chaser community, people looking for rare patterns. Some tried to find deeper meaning in it, while others just liked discussing where the patterns came from. The patterns themselves usually just manifested in the blink of an eye. High-speed cameras could catch them. There, among people talking about their blots, was a username I'd recognize anywhere. Mags. I don't get it, she posted. Static is just supposed to be background radiation. So why does it have a fucking head? She had posted a lot about finding blots and patterns. She posted pictures, videos, sound files, links to collective folders, all kinds of stuff. And I gotta say, some of the stuff she posted was downright creepy. The outline of a 6-fingered hand pressed against the screen, a perfectly white circle. One image just straight up looked like an eye. But the final one was probably the creepiest. The screen was entirely white, with the outline of a humanoid figure. No static. It stayed like this for 15 seconds, she'd posted. I sent her a few messages. Mags was the kind of person to get roped into all kinds of weirdness. While this was one of the weirdest things she'd been into, it still wasn't as bad as some of the anti-vaccination stuff she looked at, or the "our government is run by reptiles" thing. Then again, all of that was just curiosity. Here she was writing guides and posting pictures. She dug up an old TV just to try it out. This had gotten to her. What had she seen? Weeks passed and I didn't get any answers. She wasn't online, she wasn't anywhere. By now, I was getting worried. I tried to call her on the number she'd texted, but I got nothing. I tried looking her up, but she had pretty much nothing of her private life linked anywhere. She was terrified of getting doxxed. But I was also getting curious. There had to be a reason she was so into this, and her guides were pretty straightforward. Something in me pushed me to at least give it a shot. So I dug my mom's old CRT TV out of storage, cleaned it up, and plugged it in. I had Mag's guide on my laptop. There were ways to do this with other devices than a TV, but an old TV was the simplest. You needed a powerful magnet, you needed to know where the flyback transformer was located, and you had to face the screen east or west depending on if the transformer was to the left or right of the heatsink. After that, you had to set a specific channel based on your nearest physical TV station, an OTA broadcast station. There was a list of them attached in a folder. in my area, rural Minnesota, the channel was set to 0506. Finally, the magnet was to be put directly beneath the flyback transformer, but dampened by about a half an inch of hardwood. I followed the directions, but the payoff was underwhelming to say the least. Just a blast of static. White and black dots fighting for supremacy. A monotone burst of sound. But then again, the final part of the guide was to simply wait. It could take hours. I left it all on and went on with my day. I left the house for a short while to get some groceries, but apart from that, I was just in the other room reading up on what to expect. Apparently, after being tuned into the channel for a few hours, the static would start rearranging into recognizable patterns. Just strange things picked out of the air. Silhouettes, patterns, sounds, something. After a few hours, I sat down in front of the TV and just waited. It was getting dark, and the October rain was relentless. Trees were moving outside my window, and I was feeling a bit vulnerable. I huddled up in a blanket on my couch, imagining what caused Mags to send me that message. Where had all the static chasers gone? What was I really expecting? Some kind of message? An answer? I dozed off a few times. It was boring, and I didn't really see anything. It was a bit like cloud watching. You just started imagining things after a while. Still, Mags wasn't the type of person who would get freaked out by cloud watching. Something must have spooked her. As it was getting close to midnight, I gave up. I got down from the couch, leaned over, and reached for the TV. Then I saw something. It wasn't big, just a small black dot, but it was unmoving. While the static of white and black roared, there was this small black dot that just stuck there. As I leaned closer, I could sort of make out a shape. Kind of. And there was a sound in the static, like a high-pitched noise layered on top of it. The spot grew larger, and I started to see it clearer. It was humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, completely ink black. It was moving amongst the static, growing larger as it came towards me. The high-pitched noise grew clearer. Finally, as the figure was as large as my hand, I heard it. It was talking, barely breaking through the roaring static. Hello. I freaked out. My first reaction was to just run, but I suppressed it. Instead, I turned the TV off. The second I touched the knob, something surged through me. It might have been a spark or a sudden spike of electricity, but whatever it was, it left me numb. My eyes went black, and I was lying on my back. I started panting. I couldn't see. No matter how much I blinked or adjusted my eyes, it was all just black. I rubbed them, slapped myself, tried to control my breathing, but there was nothing. Slowly, I started to realize something. This wasn't my floor. I ran my hands across the ground and it was just nothing. I felt nothing. I saw nothing. I wasn't warm or cold or hurt. I could feel my body moving, but it wasn't really a feeling or a motion. I remember forcing myself to have a conscious thought, just to know I was still alive, but that was all I could do. I was a brain floating in nothingness, imagining myself having a body. I felt sick, or I thought I felt sick. Maybe it was just the memory of sickness or a creeping panic. In the distance, there was a light. I felt drawn towards it. Slowly but surely, I could feel myself moving towards it as I imagined my legs carrying me. Still, I felt nothing. I was sending the signals, but there were no limbs there to respond. My body just wasn't there. Then, as I got closer to the light, I felt parts of me returning. I could look down and see my hands. They weren't whole, as they blinked in and out of existence in bursts of static, like a texture printed on my skin. They were translucent and so thin I could pass one hand through the other with just a little force. I wasn't completely physical, but the closer I got to the light, the more whole I became. The light, floating like a sun in a starless universe, was a sphere. A big white and black sphere, exploding with static patterns, black and white dancing across the surface. There was a noise coming from it, growing louder in my head. It was static, but not just noise. I could hear through it. I could decipher it. A million voices, old arguments, whispers, promises, cries. People. There were people there, inside the sphere, and it was all just noise. Pointless, mortal noise. Remnants of consciousness, though. I got closer. It dawned on me that the sphere was actually white, with black spots appearing and reappearing. But it wasn't just spots. As I got closer, I realized they were silhouettes. Every single spot, a person, all stuck within the static. Millions, maybe billions. I turned around. From the glow of the sphere, I looked out into the darkness. It wasn't a void, it was a massive creature so vast it covered my entire field of view. A universe of ravenous somethings. Some humanoid, some not. Some spoke, some screamed, some cried, but they were all there, and they were coming for me. A universe of the unspeakable. My eyes burned with static, my ears filled with screams of unimaginable despair, terror, hopelessness, inevitability, mortality. Something reached for me. Hands tore at me from all sides, some to drag me to the sphere, others to tear me apart and devour me. Nothingness at one side, eternity at the other. I tried to scream, but my lungs weren't there. Instead, all that escaped my mouth was more static. Words spoken by those long since past. Screams within screams within screams. I was joining the choir. Forever. In a sudden burst of light, there was a loud bang. I fell backwards as the transformer exploded. There was a power outage. I was back in front of my TV. A millisecond had passed, at most. I laid there on the floor crying, screaming. That place was real. I'd been there. My fingers were numb and my entire body was still trying to find itself. I screamed and screamed and screamed. But all I heard was static. My neighbors called the police. I have no memory of being taken to a hospital. I barely remember my brothers coming to see me the next day. And I didn't even protest when the doctor labeled it all a mental lapse. I thought it was some sort of epileptic seizure. It took me days to even speak again. By that point, I was at my younger brother's place, curled up in a blanket on his couch. I forced myself to have a conscious thought, to feel that I was alive. I had to. Is this what happened to Mags? I thought. What about the others? Memories of that space forced itself into my mind, and I just started screaming again as my mind went back into a blank, anxious panic. It's been a couple of months. I've tried writing this down, piece by piece, but it takes time. I get this awful anxiety like I'm going back into that void, like I'm bound to go there, to join the others, to lose all conscious thought and just turn into emotion and noise. I get these awful panic attacks and I cry myself to sleep. I sometimes just break apart, begging whatever gods may be not to bring me back. I once got attacked so bad I pissed myself in a Walmart. I'm seeing Dr. Jane, a therapist, but she focuses on the wrong things. I don't know. She's an odd one. I found the static chasers. Well, at least the stories about them. Mags died from electrocution. She and about 24 others. In Singapore, 4 people died all at once at a viewing party. 2 Germans died from electrocution while sitting next to a battery-powered radio. I think the only thing that pulled me back was the shitty wiring on that TV in my apartment. That power outage saved my life. Without it, I'd be gone. I'd have been pulled in, along with the rest, stuck in that sphere or pulled apart. Forever static. Forever. Actual. Eternity. Still, something of mine is still there. I can feel it. And whenever I hear static, I can still sort of decipher it. I can see the black spots and the patterns as remnants of people waiting for me to return. I can feel their pull. I'm sorry I couldn't help you, Mags. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do. For the love of God, for the love of everything good and warm, please, please. I can't go back. I can't live with this. Thank you for listening. You can probably handle another horror story, right?